Over 7 years ago, I took a huge leap of faith and I hitchhiked in December from Missouri to New York. And then I rode a bus back. I also rode a bus partially there, so technically cheated. But there was a lot of hitchhiking and a lot of crazy things that happened, and I want to take it back. But first, let me explain why I did this. So, this is one of the first times in my life where I was extremely passionate about music and grinding at it for years. And I was brainstorming what can I do to just fully invest my time and energy and passion into some project, quit my day job, but still have enough money to live. And around this time, I quit my day job, and I was really optimistic and passionate about this idea to hitchhike from Missouri to New York and start a Kickstarter campaign. So virtually every single person that I talked to in between Missouri and New York, and then on my way back, could be a patron of this Kickstarter campaign for my music. And I can street perform all the way over there and then all the way back and maybe make enough money to get back and more. And yeah, many things about this journey actually turned out and worked out very well. And number one, I'm proud of myself and really glad that I did it, because I became stronger from it. I faced my fears and took a leap of faith. So let me start from the beginning. It starts out, I have about 100 pounds worth of gear and a guitar and a small portable amp. I had like a giant duffel bag and then a giant bag that went on my back, and like the stuff was like behind my back but up to here, and I'm like slowly going along. The first 5 minutes of this journey, I almost turned around because it's like I'm already out of breath and I've got all this gear and I'm like, how many more miles do I have to go? I'm still in Columbia, Missouri, and I'm walking to a gas station, and someone does give me a ride at that gas station to exit or on ramp to the highway. And eventually on that first day, someone picked me up on that on ramp, and they took me 20 miles or so to this, basically a truck stop in between Columbia, Missouri and St. Louis. And then there, my cousin picked me up and took me to St. Louis. My family supported me, and a couple of family members helped me out in this trip, so I didn't have to rely completely on strangers. But basically, my cousin took me to St. Louis, and then the next morning, I slept at her house, and then she dropped me off at East St. Louis at a truck stop. And I was stuck there for a couple days, just trying to get a ride from a trucker, and sleeping under a bridge. And this was probably the scariest part. I was in East St. Louis. It was like 3 a.m. I'm at the top of this like bridge, like under a bridge, and I got covers over me because it's really cold. Like I'm sleeping in freezing weather, and had covers and a tarp and stuff, so I was surviving. It was cold though, and I was kind of halfway awake, halfway asleep, and then I'd hear like a slight noise, and I wake up, and then one time I heard a car door, and then I flipped over the covers and I stood up like, what? Who is it? Bring it on! And then whoever it was ran back to their car and then like drove off. But it could have been much worse. Like, could have been murdered or kidnapped, or who knows. Like, I was much younger then, and also skinnier, and I mean, I'm still skinny, but anyway, I survived. It was kind of scary. Eventually a trucker did pick me up and took me all the way to Indianapolis, and this trucker was a character. He was like, I don't know, just talking and talking and talking, and it was kind of funny because he was kind of talking crap about younger people, and I was a younger person, and millennials, and I was a millennial, and he's talking about like all this, I don't know, kind of like my person, not necessarily my personality, but like things that it was like, I don't know. The guy was a character. He also kind of seemed intimidating. He was like really big, eating peanuts, and like talked about keto stuff, and then he was just like very outspoken, and just like, I don't know, like part of the time I was like, is he gonna drop me off, or like, I don't know, do something crazy to me? But he did drop me off, and nothing crazy happened, and I'm really thankful that he took me to Indianapolis. And in Indianapolis, as soon as I got there? No, the first night I got there, I was like outside of the city, and then I had to sleep at the bottom of a hill next to an on-ramp. It was freezing weather, I remember that. And then as soon as I woke up the next morning, someone gave me a ride into the city. And then as soon as I made it into the city and I got dropped off by that person, I'm like going along, barely making it to where I can busk. And then this lady stops and she like gives me a ride further into downtown where I can busk. And she's talking to me, and she actually offered for me to stay at her place and perform a house show at her place. She invited some friends and family, and that actually happened. Later that night, I went to her place, and I played a house show, and I live streamed it. And that was awesome. That was one of the best things that happened out of this trip. Just like getting people together, getting to play my music, traveling along. But before that night, she basically dropped me off downtown so I could busk all day, and I met a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of homeless people. This one homeless guy that sang almost just like Kurt Cobain from Nirvana. I loved his voice. He took me all around the city. Like we weren't just on the streets, we were going through buildings and tunnels, and like he's like, hey, look at this guy, he's my good friend. Oh, over here is my other good friend, he knows like half the city. And I'm like following him, like we're walking through the city playing music. And part of me kind of wishes that I would have just like maybe stayed and performed more music rather than just following him around and meeting a bunch of people I never saw again. But at the same time, I think this guy needed some company, but at the same time, I don't know, I wasn't sure if he was manipulating me. Who knows who he was, but it turned out great. I mean, honestly, we played music. Dude had some problems. He might have been on some drugs and stuff, but he seemed like a decent dude. And honestly, he was just trying to show me around town and maybe introduce me to people. And you know, I'm glad I did that. Even though I never really saw any of those people again. The whole experience of just walking around town with this guy was actually fun and great. Got to play music, meet a bunch of people. And then after Indianapolis, the lady who let me stay at her place and had the house show basically paid for a bus ticket to Ohio, where my aunt lived in Ohio. So my aunt let me stay at her place. I didn't do too much street performing there. And then from Ohio to New York, I got a bus ticket. And once I made it to New York, honestly, it was crazy. It was like a lot of people. It was at first intimidating. In fact, most of the time intimidating. And it was hard for people to hear me, even with the amplified guitar. So loud. But there were points where people heard me, and there were points where like it was hard street performing. Like I didn't have near as much experience as I do now. This was before I was a full-time street performer for years and homeless, but street performing all day. And so it was like, it was just such a huge leap for me to take, and for me to continue to lean into it and just keep street performing and just keep playing all day and meeting people. The first night I stayed at this guy's house, he played piano. Pretty sure he was homosexual and kind of hitting on me, but I didn't do anything. And he wasn't really a creep. Like, he was kind of respectful about it. But anyway, he was good at piano. He also, you know, I wasn't a good singer and maybe an okay performer, but he could basically tell I wasn't all that good. And I got that vibe because he played like classical and he's really good at music and probably reading it. And then there's me over here singing out of key, running around like a hippie. But anyway, the next night I stayed at one of my mom's friend's son's place. He lives in an apartment at the very top of a building. Had to take a lot of stairs there. I'm like carrying my hundreds of pound stuff up the stairs for like half an hour to an hour. And I finally make it up there. And the dude just seemed very angry. Not angry, but judgmental. Because he's basically like, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life? Why are you doing this? Who's your target audience? And I do actually appreciate that he asked some hard-hitting questions, but he never understood like one to really like dive out and take a leap of faith like I did. He thought I was a complete waste of time, and I don't. I think, you know, I faced my fear, so just the fact that I kept going that first day and I kept going and I kept trying hard, it built character for me to take on other challenges and try just as hard at other. Sorry, phone just died. But anyway, so this guy gave me some constructive criticism, but it was like just completely negative, and you know, I don't think he ever saw the value or the fact that I was willing to have the courage to go out there and try to figure out, you know, how I was doing this music. And I was at the very beginning, so I'm glad I did that. I kind of jump started the snowball effect with a good first couple steps or leaps, because I was so it kind of got the momentum going. And even though I made it back, well, let me say a couple other things about New York. So very pretty, very awesome. I didn't make enough money overall, and I think I made $10 for the Kickstarter, so the whole thing was a failure in that sense. But I made it back home. I got a couple jobs, got back to that cycle and grind, and I'm glad I did this. I wouldn't take it back. I learned a lot. I grew courage and strength and more clarity on, you know, what and how I can do music for a living, what doesn't work also, or what didn't work for me, what I could do differently next time, not necessarily with hitchhiking, but for a project like Kickstarter. I learned a lot, and I took that leap of faith and a whole bunch of failures, but I learned from all those failures, and I kept going, and it only added fuel to the fire of my passion. And yeah, again, I'm really glad that I kept going, because I was really scared. It was really hard. My whole body was tingling like the first 30 minutes. I thought I was going to die. I was like, oh, am I really doing this? All right, I'm doing it. And I did it. So, how about y'all? What do you think? Have you ever hitchhiked before? You ever been to New York? Leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching. For the animals! Woo!